Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Sorry, as per usual, I've started doing this and forgot to turn the volume up on my phone, which is a bit silly. So, hi, I'm Sarah, career coach, team coach, executive coach, work with individuals and organisations to help them find fulfilment in their careers, but also I coach in a number of different areas. I do a lot in terms of mindset. I'm a law of attraction coach, so I do a lot of work in that arena as well. So that's a bit about me, and what I'm going to cover on this week's Facebook Live is just a little bit more about negative mindsets and overcoming setbacks. Now, if this is something that you're struggling with at the moment, and I've had a lot of people writing to me about anxiety and feeling overwhelmed, something that's maybe they've had for a long time, but now it seems to be exacerbated by a lot of the uncertainty that's going on at the moment, which I know exists in terms of career, what's happening globally. We're in unprecedented times. So over the last, I think, 2 weeks, if you go back through my page, I've done a couple of videos on resilience and how you overcome what we as humans label negative feelings. So if this is something that feels particularly relevant to you at the moment, and we all go through phases where we don't feel quite as robust or resilient as we do usually, that's just part of life, I'm afraid. It's the ups and downs of life that we all kind of go through. The point is, if you're staying in a predominantly what we call negative mindset, that can impact you over the longer term, as some of you know, and it's really important not to ruminate, not to sort of, like I said before, cows have 4 stomachs because they ruminate, they chew over things, they chew over their food. We're not cows, so we don't need to do that. But if you look back over the last couple of weeks, I have done a few videos on this because I find as a coach, I help people to set visions, to set goals, to empower them to understand themselves, to move forward. But actually what I find is this mindset, the concept of our mindset, what we believe about ourselves, what we tell us about ourselves, what we listen to what other people say about us, whether that's true or not, and how we deal with setbacks is actually, for me, these are like critical success factors. They are, you can have goals, you can have visions, as long as you're broadly in a positive mindset, a positive frame of mind about how you believe, what you believe about yourself and the world around you. I think you stand a really, really good chance of achieving your goals. On the flip side, if you're in a predominantly negative state and you see any single setback as an opportunity to stop, give up, then I'm afraid I don't think you're in the right place to be able to achieve your goals and your visions. And that sounds harsh, but I find it's true. Now, as I've said before, we all have setbacks. That's just life, so it allows us in a way to really enjoy things when things are going well and we're in the flow. I don't know if you've had that feeling. For many of us, that's a fantastic place to be in, and we can really achieve a lot during those times. And then we get the contrast. It's like the 2 sides of the battery, the positive and the negative. We get the contrast where things aren't going as well. And actually, the more that you cultivate a positive, flexible, open mindset to really analyze those situations, ask yourself some questions, do some exercises, shift your emotional set point, nearly swore there, set point, then you will find that that these setbacks are our greatest teachers. And what you might find is that when you encounter a similar situation in the future, you might think, oh wow, actually I've dealt with something like this before, and do you know what, I dealt with it really well. I thought it was going to be awful, but it wasn't. So it is, a lot of these are skill sets as well. So over the last couple of weeks I have shared a lot of tools with you, and I've shared a lot about what's going on in our brains neurologically when we think negative and positive. So for example, I've talked about resilience, the ability to bounce back, and how you do that, how you keep your resilience in check, keep it topped up. how as human beings we can get very overwhelmed with emotion, and how our brains will stop at the highest point of confusion and emotion. So we've got a left side of the brain, we've got a right side of the brain. The left side are overwhelmed. Literally our brain, those two bits of the brain aren't quite working in the right way, so it's all jumbled up. So that is why when I say about writing things down, it's really important, because it accesses that left part of your brain, which allows you to look at something, look at it in front of you, look at it objectively and think, do you know what? It doesn't look so bad looking at it here from a distance. And it allows you to access that part of your brain that is all to do with planning, motivation, rather than it swimming around. So when we're overwhelmed, our brains do kind of freeze. It's part of our programming as human beings. It will freeze or stop or try and run away at that highest point of emotion. So that might be when you go, oh, just have a glass of wine, or I'll have some chocolate, because your brain, it's not coping in the way that it does when you're in a kind of more balanced, secure frame of mind. And unfortunately, when we're overwhelmed, our brain does tend to freeze at that highest point of emotion. So know that there are things we can do about it. The other thing that I mentioned as well is, as human beings, we tend to label feelings as positive or negative. Now, yes, certain things feel better than others. Of course, there's no denying that. However, we have to be careful about the labels we put on things. If we can try and neutralise that a bit and say, okay, right, hang on a minute, I'm getting a strong feeling here, I'm getting a strong reaction, I'm feeling triggered, that word of feeling triggered. What is that telling me? And try and neutralise the language that you're telling yourself in your mind, and actually what you're telling yourself, you know, when you're talking to other people. So even though I've called some of these lives about negative feelings, negative this, that and the other, that's just an easy way for me to tell you what the video is about. Think of it as information. What's the question behind this information? So, you know, as I've mentioned, I'm just going to recap a few things, and then next week I'm going to start tackling a new subject. If there's a particular subject you do want to hear more on, then that sounded terrible, didn't it? Then please let me know in the comments or drop me a direct message. I've got a few ideas of things that my clients have been talking to me about in terms of, do I stay or do I go at the moment, because of the current global situation in terms of my role, my job. Is it possible for me to look for a new career at this point in time? I would argue yes, and I'm seeing it happen. I'm seeing it happen with my clients. Clients are getting new offers, new opportunities coming in. Yes, some sectors are slower than others, but there are still opportunities out there, and actually opportunities to start thinking about, you know, can I do a bit of planning if I want to start up my own business? Other themes that are coming up for me at the moment, and well, not for me but for my clients, is procrastination. So these are some of the areas I think I'm going to tackle over the next few weeks. Okay, so let's just recap some of the stuff that I've talked about the last few weeks about resilience, negative thinking, and how it can really spiral out of control. So unfortunately, setbacks, negative feelings, as we call them, negative feelings, remember what I said about labelling those emotions, that's really where the growth is. I mean, it's very easy to be happy, secure, in the flow when things are going well, and yes, please, we want more of that. So if you switch your mind to a more positive point of attraction, you will attract it like a magnet. You will attract better things to you. Have you ever noticed when you're in a bad mood and it's like, oh, that thing's really annoying me, and all of a sudden the day becomes really bad? Just stop, think, right, okay, what's going on here? Is it I'm tired? Is it I'm hungry? Is it I'm feeling a bit lonely? Am I frustrated about world events? Just stop and think, right, that was one segment of my day. It does not have to be the rest of my day. The rest of my day does not have to go like this. I can stop and think, right, what can I just quickly do? How can I pivot? I know some people have got, pivoting is a term used in basketball, and I've heard it used in spiritual discussions as well, in terms of how it's about course correcting, pivot. You can pivot your emotional set point. So if you are feeling like that, you can stop and think, this doesn't have to be how the rest of my day goes. And thank you for the people that are joining already. I'm getting lots of thumbs up and other forms of emojis. Thank you very much. So agility, pivoting, the ability to course correct is really, really important. And a lot of businesses at the moment and leaders are shifting quickly due to having to work remotely. They're adjusting policies, how they manage teams, how they lead teams, how they organise teams. And you can do this for yourself as well. You can be agile, you can pivot, you can learn, you can just stop, take a deep breath. You know, I talked about it, I think last week. Put your hands up in the air, you know, get that posture straight, smile, fake a smile. It creates the right hormones in your body. Swing your arms or do this, cope with things. Those are things that you can do to adjust your state and think, okay, what's going on at the moment? Write it down so you can access that analytical part of your brain. Write it down and think, what's going on at the moment? That's one part of my day. The rest of my day does not have to be this way. You can just edge yourself up in terms of your feelings. Some other things you might find happening. Monkey mind. Have you ever heard of monkey mind? So I'm just recapping, as I mentioned, a few things that I talked about over the last few weeks. Monkey mind is where we really start regretting the past, or we worry about the future and judgments about ourselves. So again, you might hear negative thinking is called the monkey mind. That's where we have this negative chatter in our minds. And again, the techniques that I shared with you over the last 2 weeks on the videos, they're all on my page, or they should be on my YouTube channel, give you specific techniques to stop that monkey mind. It's like a chimpanzee going in your brain, you know. So if you imagine you've got a negative chimp on one part, one shoulder, what would the nice chimp be saying? Or if you had the devil, what would the angel be saying? And if you've got this like gnarly voice, this monkey mind sort of nattering away saying negative things, does it have a voice? Does it have a shape? Does it have a sound? And if it does, write it down or draw it, you know, get it all out on paper, get those frustrations out, give it a name. You know, perhaps it's like, I don't know, annoying or something. Perhaps it's got a special name. Write it all down, draw it, and then scribble it out, or, you know, think about it and think, I'm going to like picture this thing moving far away in the distance. I'm going to turn down the volume on this gremlin. I'm going to sort of see it moving away. I'm going to turn down the volume. I'm going to change the colour on it, and I'm going to amplify the colour of the angel or the nice friendly chimp, which is actually your voice as well. It is there. Be mindful if you're repeating old thoughts and behaviours that no longer fit in with your current circumstances. Sometimes we just get trapped into thinking, oh yeah, well, I'm not good enough. And then we realise, hang on a minute, that's not true. Where did that come from? That's a really good sign that you're ready to move on and think more positive things about yourself. What would your best friend say about you? Would your best friend ever say anything like that to you? And if you can say, well, no, they wouldn't, why are we saying it to ourselves? Replace those thoughts. And it is a bit like going to the gym. If you catch yourself with these thoughts, I'm not good enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, then replace them with more positive thoughts. Okay, righteousness, be really careful about righteousness. Sometimes we have a need to be right about everything, and sometimes we just need to forgive and let go, because forgiving someone and letting go doesn't mean we condone someone for what they've done. It doesn't mean we agree with what they've done, but it helps us. That's why forgiveness and letting go is so important. And when we feel righteous, when we feel that we are, and somebody may have done something that isn't appropriate at all, but what good is it to hang on to it? You either, you know, speak to someone, get some help, process it, write it down, but don't hold on to those feelings of righteousness, as in, well, I'm right and they're wrong, because it doesn't help you move on. That thinking is not open to think about, okay, well, hang on a minute. What does that mean about this particular relationship? Do I stay? Do I let it go? Does it mean that perhaps I could have done something differently? Perhaps, you know, I'd choose to be hanging around with a different kind of person. So there's always something we can learn. And be mindful if you blame yourself for things that weren't really your fault. Maybe, okay, maybe we all mess up, right? So maybe we weren't our best selves, but just learn to forgive yourself and think, what would I do differently? You know, so have a think about those kinds of things. Another tip that I can give you is, if imagine you were at a party, and this is all about overcoming negative thoughts, and you were really excited about going to this party, and you walked into a house and you saw a guy and he was sitting there on his own, looking very happy, and he said, "Oh, hiya, my name's Fred, and I'm no good at relationships, and I always screw up my jobs. What would it feel like to be around the company of that person?" So maybe you are being your own Fred. So it, you know, maybe if you're feeling that way, stand in front of the mirror and say, "Hi, my name's Fred," whatever your name is, you know, use your real name, and go, "I'm no good at jobs, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at the other." Try that and see how it feels. And then try it again, saying, "Hi, my name's Fred, and you know, I'm looking for a great job that I really enjoy. I've moved on from my relationship." And just notice how different that feels in terms of body language, tone. Even if it feels a bit fake at the moment, try it, because you know, sometimes we're our own worst enemies. When we're feeling negative, we create a negative aura around us. So imagine going to that party, imagine meeting Fred, imagine meeting someone who was saying, "Do you know what? I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at that." Would you want to hang around that person? No, you wouldn't. So try changing that script. Try writing down and thinking, is the way that I'm thinking, is it useful? Is it helpful? What's a more helpful way of thinking? Is what I'm thinking true? Was everything my fault? I very, very much doubt it, unless you've done something really awful. Is this just an old story or a script that I keep replaying, like, I don't know, a record that's stuck? I know we don't use records anymore. You know, is this an unhelpful story? Does this story that I'm telling myself help me to take action, or that's effective or ineffective? And is this helpful, or is it my mind just babbling on? Is it just that I'm blaming myself, I'm being righteous, I'm saying all this negative stuff because I've got into the habit of doing it? Sometimes it's habit, and sometimes we forget that there's a different way of thinking, that perhaps we haven't looked at all the angles that are involved in this particular situation. So identify, ask those questions, ask them to yourselves with compassion, and change the script. Change what that gremlin looks like, sounds like, feels like. Turn down the volume, visualize it going further away. Let things go, interrogate your thoughts, ask, is it true? Is it helping me? Is it moving me forward? Is it just a habit? And make a decision about what you want to think about yourself, what you want to feel about yourself tomorrow. And I know this is really tough. It can be really, really tough to do, but if you keep doing it, it's like going to the gym. Gradually you will see and build results. So there's another tip as well. There are things, believe it or not, and I've tried it, so I know that it works, that, you know, for example, there's many years ago where I was feeling particularly down, and I thought, you know what, if I can just notice a few simple things around me that don't take much brain power to do, that really worked for me. So it's like, do you know what, God, look at the wind in the trees, or wow, look at that tree over there, or, you know, even at the moment with everything that's going on, wow, I'm really noticing the quiet around me, or, you know, oh, I can hear the birds singing in the garden. If you can just start noticing a few things that kind of lift your spirits, you can start there and build up and up and up, and start to find more things that you can appreciate right now, right at this point in time, and you can build and build and build upon it. And just try doing it every day, a few times a day. You're like, oh wow, you know, look at that, I don't know, that woman walking her dog, she looks really happy, or, you know, look at the sky, it's really blue at the moment, or, you know, even the rain, look at the rain, it's sort of sprinkling on the lawn or something. So start looking at what you can appreciate right now, those simple things that don't require too much energy, too much effort. You can write them down if you want, and just get into the habit of doing it, you know. Some other things that I can recommend to you as well is, again, this is something I talked about last week. I already talked about the posture of raising your arms, standing up straight, because it shifts your energy. I talked last week about getting your right arm and crossing it to your left knee, your left arm to your right knee, because it helps those two sides of our brain to function more effectively. It's like a pattern interrupt. So those were on last week's video. It stops the left side and the right side of the brain getting all scrambled up, which is where we we can get overwhelmed, where we can get confused because we've got this heightened emotion. So there was those couple of exercises. I've just recapped them now. I think they're on last week's video, which would have been about, I think it was last Friday I did the video, and it's on my YouTube channel as well. But remember, motion will always be emotion. So one of the best things you can do, as well as sleeping well, eating high protein foods, being around positive people, writing down your feelings, doing all the stuff I've talked about tonight, and in the last 2 videos that I did, there's so many exercises on there for you, that moving will help to dissipate emotion, because it's all bubbling away. And what happens is we start creating a stress hormone called cortisol, which is really effective to propel us to do something, to get us to move. But actually, when we have it flowing through us all the time, it's actually really bad for our bodies. It's really bad for our mind, and it's really bad for our bodies. And we want to replace that with some feel-good hormones like dopamine, what's the other one? Oxytocin. So we've got some feel-good hormones that we naturally have within us. And guess what actually releases those hormones and those chemicals? Exercise. Just go for a walk, get some fresh air. Motion beats emotion every time. Now, I'm going to give you a few other things that might help you with this as well, just to dissipate and start to minimize some of those negative loops, those negative feelings that we have within you. What you can do is, I've talked about it before, deep breathing to get oxygen in your lungs, get rid of the stale air and get some fresh oxygen into your lungs. Oxygen feeds our body. So breathe in to a count to 5 through your mouth. So through your mouth, breathe in to a slow count of 5, and then let out a very, very loud sigh. And it's kind of like, you know, like teenagers make. Now, those small sighs can actually just help you readjust your focus. And if nothing else, you sort of think, oh my goodness, I sound like a teenager, what's going on? You know, so they help release pent-up emotions. The other thing you can do, give yourself a hug. Might sound a bit weird, I don't know how comfortable you feel about that. Give yourself a hug. It releases those feel-good chemicals and hormones. You can push against a wall. So just do some push-ups against the wall, or lean against the wall and push back. Feel your muscles and your body working. Those are things you can do if you're working at home. If you're at home a lot, you can do them right here, right now. You can also do a Superman pose. So you can literally, if you're able to do it, stand up, Superman flying pose. You can do it on the floor, Superman flying pose. Right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg. It's using both parts of our brain to do that. So just do the Superman pose, stretch out. You know, sometimes that can help release hormones as well. I mean, some of these things sound a bit, some of you may feel a bit funny about doing them, but who cares? We're all at home anyway, so apart from an hour a day, so you might as well go for it. And then the other thing you can do is shake it off. You know, shaking off and moving your body and, you know, sort of shaking your arms, your hands. You could do it at the same time as you're sighing, if you like, just to get rid of all that negative stuff. So these tips that I've shared tonight are really about regrouping, rebooting and reinventing your mindset. And as I say, over the last, I think it's 2 weeks, so I did one last Friday, I think the other one was last Tuesday or Wednesday the week before, are all about resilience, overcoming challenges, reframing negative thoughts. Now, obviously, if you feel that you are, you know, if you've got a history of depression and things like that, mental health issues, then do go and see your doctor. But there's a lot we can do for ourselves, and I've gone through those tonight. I've talked about the monkey mind. I've talked about how we rinse and repeat our old ideas. I've talked about, you know, how you can really stop and change them moment by moment. I've given you lots of different techniques here about what you can do to shift your set point. And I've given you some physical exercises as well. So I'll be back next week with another Facebook Live. I think I've done a lot on setbacks and challenges. These can be honestly, so they can be our toughest challenge, how big the situation is, but they can be the situations that we let our clients do. It's great when everything's going well. Unfortunately, there are sometimes setbacks in lives, and those are the times when we can learn a huge amount. So don't bottle it up, don't brood, face it and learn from it, and try and adjust your thinking. Turn down the negative volume, you know, amplify the positive. So there you go. That's been all about dealing with setbacks, how to overcome negatives. I've given you, again, loads and loads of tips. I think over the past 3 weeks, I've probably shared about 30 different techniques. There's tons of stuff out there that can help you in a more positive manner. So I'll be back next week. Not quite sure yet what my subject is. I will have a think about it and put it on my Facebook page as an event. You're welcome to join. Any questions, any comments, feel free to get in touch with me, and enjoy the rest of your morning, day, evening, wherever you are, and stay safe. Thanks, guys.